think, bearing in mind as well that Owen and I came from a religious background where everything is spoon-fed, especially when you're raising children, parents are basically expected to follow a playbook. And it's, spoiler alert, teach your children to worship Jehovah and not make Jehovah sad by having plastic wizard toys and celebrating birthdays and that sort of thing. So it's all very convenient and mapped out when you're in the Jehovah's Witness religion as to how you're supposed to raise your child. And then when you leave the religion and you're raising children, and I now have two, one age 7, one age 2, you have to figure this stuff out for yourself. And the biggest problem for me, maybe we'll come to it, is the issue of death. Because children spring onto the stage that they're born and they're like, yay, I'm alive. So this is going to continue forever, isn't it? You know, this whole situation of me being alive. And you're like, and it's a really difficult one for them to wrap their head around. So that's, and maybe we'll talk about that a bit later, but yeah, it's definitely come with many challenges, and things aren't as simple and mapped out as they are when you're in a fundamentalist religion. I think for me personally, bearing in mind, we don't just have our family in the setting of a building where the downstairs is Jehovah's Witness and the upstairs is atheist. So that's complicated. But we also live in a Catholic country, which is Croatia. So Jessica's going to school with a classroom full of Catholics. And some of her closest friends go to church and are in the process of being indoctrinated with things that she doesn't believe. And so the biggest challenge for me is how to avoid confrontation. Because when you're a kid, you know, it's very easy if you feel like you're being confronted with a situation and someone is saying, oh, you know, my church is so great, God is so great because X, Y, Z, whether it's a friend at school or whether it's her grandmother, it's very difficult not to say, don't be silly. You know, Daddy's told me about this. You're just being lied to and tricked. You know, snap out of it, you know. So it's a kind of a challenge to manage their responses in those situations. And the way I say it is, well, I have kind of a way of describing religion in general as the bad men. And Jehovah's Witnesses are a form of bad men who lie to people. But there are different versions of bad men who make different lies to different people, and that's how she understands at the moment religion to be. And I say, but the thing is, when you're being lied to and you're being tricked, you don't know you're being lied to or tricked, and it would be unkind for someone to come up to you and tell you you're being lied to and tricked without doing it in a very kind way. So it's best to just remember that people have their own ways of thinking, and yeah, and not be too arrogant or confrontational when speaking to people. So that's, but it's easy to say that, you know, on a platform at a Faithless Forum, but to actually put that into a language that a child can understand is a real challenge. Reporting of child sexual abuse, and I feel as though this is something where my own children, thankfully, are not at risk because they're not going to Kingdom Halls of Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses being one of many organisations that cover up child sexual abuse.
Oh yeah.
But they do still obviously go to school, they'll have music lessons, they'll be engaged in all sorts of activities in the future where child abuse could potentially be covered up. I think it should be a crime to knowingly and maliciously cover up child sexual abuse. It isn't. Or I don't see people going to jail for it. And I think that it should be a little bit like murder. If you can kill someone and not want to kill them. Or you can kill them and it's just all some horrible accident. I can imagine a situation where you come to learn of abuse and for whatever reason you don't know that it's your responsibility to let the police know. That's different to coming to know about abuse and deliberately trying to cover up the abuse because you're trying to protect an organisation. And people should be behind bars for that. Because what happens then is that the abuse just multiplies. The people who are going under the radar get to take their pick. And so that would be, I think, the single most important change I would want to see. We need to stop allowing child sexual abuse to be covered up. For me, it depends on how religious the holiday is, because I don't actually count Christmas as a religious holiday. I think the Christians nicked it from the pagans, and now the atheists have nicked it from the Christians. So it's not even a religious holiday anymore. Easter, a bit more religious actually, and we don't celebrate Easter in our family. However, if Jessica goes to school and the class are doing an activity that involves Easter in some way, she's bloody well going to do that activity, which is different to when I went to school. I can remember being forced to stand in the playground outside in the winter time with the whole school staring at me through the windows because I refused to colour in a poster of Santa Claus to promote a school Christmas fair.
I went through the same thing.
And that memory is seared in my brain, and that was a position I knew I had to take because it had been drummed into me by my parents that you had to completely ignore anything to do with any holidays. That's not the attitude that Jessica has. So she is allowed to do whatever activities she wants the school asks her to do, no matter what religious holiday it may be.
Sure.
But when we're in our home, we'll decide what we celebrate and don't celebrate. Depends on the circumstances, how frequently are they going to church, how young are they, have they been briefed in advance or afterwards as to what they've been hearing, are they going to church and hearing stuff and assuming it to be fact without that going corrected. So I think we should remember how impressionable young minds can be and make sure that if they do go to church with a friend or whatever, they're given as much context as possible.